The morning sun was just starting to hit the lake when my entire world dissolved into a screen of zeros. I stood there in the kitchen, the smell of fresh coffee suddenly making me sick, as my brother-in-law leaned against the counter with a look of pure triumph. He did not even try to hide it, whispering that they simply required those funds far more than I did. Every single dollar I had scraped together over 5 painful years to expand my floral design business had vanished in a single, agonizing refresh. He honestly believed he had broken me right there in that rental cabin, but he was completely wrong. This was not the moment I fell apart, it was the second I finally opened my eyes. My name is Clara, and I spent my whole life believing that family was an unbreakable safety net. I was raised in a quiet suburb of Chicago, where my parents ran a modest bakery that taught me the value of early mornings and honest sweat. They taught me to respect my own boundaries, work hard, and never rely on anyone else to build my future. My younger sister, Jenna, was the complete opposite, drifting through life on a cloud of entitlement and expecting everyone else to clean up her constant messes. I spent years protecting her from her own bad decisions, assuming she would eventually find her footing and mature. Instead, she found Brandon, a slick, fast-talking real estate speculator who treated everyone like a stepping stone. When our parents passed away in a tragic highway accident a few years ago, the modest inheritance we received split our paths even wider. I poured my half into a brick-and-mortar floral boutique, while Jenna married Brandon within 6 months and watched him slowly drain her share into bad investments. By the time our extended family organized a weekend getaway at a lakeside lodge in Wisconsin, Jenna seemed like a shadow of her former self. She kept looking at me with quiet desperation, while Brandon dominated every conversation with loud, empty boasts about his supposed financial brilliance. I felt an underlying tension the moment I arrived, a silent warning in the air that something terrible was brewing just beneath the surface. The first sign of trouble was incredibly subtle, yet it made the hairs on my arms stand straight up. I returned to my upstairs guest room after dinner and noticed my laptop, which I had left closed on the desk, was sitting at a slightly different angle. The power cord was plugged into the opposite side, and when I opened the lid, the keyboard felt slightly warm to the touch. My search history had been completely wiped clean, not just cleared, but surgically scrubbed of any recent activity. A cold dread settled in my chest, but I forced myself to ignore it, chalking it up to paranoia. It was not until the next morning, when my head assistant called me in a panic about a rejected vendor payment, that the trap finally snapped shut. I opened my financial portal with trembling fingers, praying it was a temporary system glitch, but the interface displayed a flat 0. 5 years of late nights, missed weekends, and careful budgeting had been wiped clean overnight through a series of authorized digital transfers. I walked downstairs into the bustling dining area feeling entirely detached from my own body, my voice barely a whisper as I announced that my accounts were empty. The cabin fell completely silent, save for Jenna, who stared intensely into her coffee cup, and Brandon, who slowly smirked from the end of the table. He casually remarked that perhaps my little boutique was just poorly managed, his voice dripping with an arrogance that made my blood run cold. I demanded to see his own transaction history to clear his name, but his eyes turned icy as he told me he owed me absolutely nothing. My uncle stepped between us as the tension threatened to boil over, but Brandon simply scoffed, leaning forward to deliver a devastating verbal blow. He quietly muttered that they needed the capital to save their own house, and that I would never see a single penny of it again. The sheer audacity of his confession sent a shockwave through the room, but instead of crying, I felt an intense, freezing calm wash over me. I realized in that exact moment that playing nice was over, and I was going to use every resource at my disposal to destroy him. What Brandon did not know was that my business database had been targeted by a digital scammer 6 months prior, prompting me to install an advanced security suite. The software was designed to silently activate the laptop camera, log keystrokes, and record device authorization codes whenever an unauthorized user attempted to bypass my administrative firewall. I pulled my mobile phone from my pocket and immediately dialed the local sheriff department, calmly reporting an active grand larceny and unauthorized computer intrusion. Brandon laughed loudly, mockingly asking if the local authorities were going to tuck me into bed, completely unaware that his smug face had already been captured in high definition. When the call connected, I read the exact physical address of our cabin to the dispatcher, my voice steady and completely devoid of fear. Brandon tried to snatch my phone, but my uncle blocked his path, warning him to keep his hands to himself. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly from awkward family drama to a suffocating, high-stakes standoff as we waited for the sirens to arrive in the distance. Jenna began weeping quietly into her hands, her knuckles turning white as she gripped the edge of her seat in sheer terror. I looked at her gently, begging her to finally speak up and free herself from the heavy burden of his manipulation. Brandon grabbed her arm roughly, commanding her to shut her mouth and pack their suitcases immediately so they could flee before the police arrived. But for the first time in her life, Jenna found her spine, violently wrenching her arm away from his grasp with a scream of pure exhaustion. She cried out that she was finished protecting him, finished lying for his fragile ego, and finished watching him ruin everyone around them. Before Brandon could react to her defiance, a thunderous knock rattled the front door of the cabin, followed by the heavy, unmistakable sound of police boots. 3 armed deputies and a plainclothes investigator entered the room, immediately demanding that everyone step away from each other. The investigator explained that my bank's fraud division had flagged several massive, highly suspicious transfers originating from this exact IP address during the middle of the night. Brandon frantically stammered that a foreign hacker must have accessed our shared Wi-Fi network, desperately trying to deflect the blame. I quietly handed my phone to the lead investigator, displaying the security log containing crystal-clear photos of Brandon sitting at my desk at 3 in the morning. The digital timestamps perfectly matched the exact seconds the funds were drained, leaving absolutely no room for denial or excuse. Within seconds, the deputies forced Brandon against the wall, clicking the heavy metal cuffs around his wrists as he screamed curses at his wife. As they dragged him down the front steps, Jenna collapsed against my shoulder, sobbing tears of pure relief as a toxic weight was finally lifted from her life. The investigator assured me that with such undeniable electronic evidence, the bank would quickly restore my funds and prosecute Brandon to the absolute fullest extent of the law. Over the next month, Jenna moved into my spare bedroom, slowly rebuilding her self-esteem while finalizing her divorce papers. We returned to the lake house a few weeks later to help our relatives pack up, but the air felt entirely different this time, filled with a sense of renewal and quiet peace. I realized that while family is precious, protecting your own peace and setting hard boundaries is the only way to truly survive.